video, the man is seen running out of the apartment complex. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. In December 2021, 26-year-old Brianna Hale was living in Stonebridge, North Carolina. She worked remotely as a customer data analyst for a national retail company, a position she had held for 3 years. Her work involved processing customer metrics, resolving data discrepancies, and preparing internal reports. The job required long hours at a computer and minimal direct interaction with colleagues. Brianna had moved to Stonebridge in late 2019 after her employer approved permanent remote work. She rented a one-bedroom apartment in a 3-story residential building and lived alone. Her income covered basic expenses, and she did not rely on family or roommates for support. In October 2021, Brianna met Kelvin Moore, then 30 years old, through mutual acquaintances at a small social gathering. Kelvin worked as a warehouse shift supervisor for a regional logistics company based outside Stonebridge. His job involved overseeing loading crews, tracking inventory movement, and managing overnight schedules. Kelvin lived alone in a rented unit several miles from Brianna's apartment. According to later interviews, he had no prior criminal record and no documented history of restraining orders or formal complaints. The relationship began with frequent contact. They communicated daily through calls and messages and saw each other several times a week. Within the first 2 months, Kelvin began staying overnight regularly. Friends of Brianna later reported that the relationship advanced faster than she had initially intended. Kelvin expressed strong attachment early, including frequent statements about long-term commitment and exclusivity. Brianna did not mirror that intensity. She continued to maintain separate routines and declined to merge finances or living arrangements. By early 2022, disagreements became more frequent. Arguments often centered on perceived slights, delayed responses to messages, or Brianna's time spent alone. Kelvin accused her of being emotionally distant. Brianna attempted to de-escalate disputes by limiting conversations or ending them early. Messages recovered later showed Kelvin apologizing repeatedly after confrontations, promising to change his behavior. The apologies followed a similar pattern and often appeared shortly after confrontational exchanges. In March 2022, approximately 6 months into the relationship, Kelvin proposed marriage. The proposal was not preceded by discussions about engagement timelines or shared plans. Brianna declined immediately. In messages to friends sent later that day, she described the proposal as unexpected and uncomfortable. She stated that it felt less like a mutual decision and more like pressure to formalize the relationship quickly. Within several days of the refusal, Brianna told Kelvin she wanted to end the relationship. The breakup did not reduce contact. Instead, Kelvin's communication increased sharply. Phone records later showed dozens of calls per day, including repeated calls within short intervals. Text messages alternated between requests to reconcile and accusations of betrayal. Brianna responded briefly at first, asking him to stop contacting her. When the messages continued, she blocked his number and accounts on social platforms. After being blocked, Kelvin began appearing at Brianna's residence without notice. Neighbors later confirmed seeing a man waiting near the entrance on multiple evenings. Brianna reported that he knocked on her door late at night and remained outside when she did not answer. In April 2022, she contacted Stonebridge police for the first time. An officer took a report and advised her to document future incidents and avoid contact. No charges were filed. In May 2022, after additional unannounced visits, Brianna contacted police again. The second report noted repeated unwanted contact but no direct threats or forced entry. Officers again advised documentation and blocking communication, stating that the behavior did not yet meet the threshold for a criminal offense under state law. Brianna complied with the advice. She saved messages, noted dates and times, and avoided engaging with Kelvin. By early June 2022, Brianna began discussing relocation with her employer. She requested a transfer to another state where her company already employed remote staff. The request was approved within weeks. Brianna did not inform Kelvin of her plans. She reduced her interactions with friends locally and packed gradually. In late June 2022, she left Stonebridge and relocated to Ridgeway Heights, Tennessee. On Monday, August 22, 2022, she told a coworker during a video call that she thought she had seen a familiar dark sedan near the entrance of her apartment complex. The coworker later said Brianna sounded cautious rather than panicked and did not ask for help, only saying she was watching for patterns. Between August 24 and August 27, Brianna sent 2 text messages to her friend Nia Waverly, 28, a dental office receptionist, describing someone being near the building at times that matched Brianna's returns from errands. In the messages, Brianna did not name Kelvin Moore, 30, but said the situation reminded her of what happened in North Carolina. Waverly advised her to report it immediately and offered to stay on the phone during commutes. Brianna replied that she did not want to overreact without proof. She also wrote that she was trying to avoid any contact that could reveal her schedule. On Sunday, August 28, Brianna made a short entry in a notes app on her phone at 9:14 p.m. The entry listed dates and times. It contained no narrative, only what appeared to be a personal log: car near gate, footsteps in hall, door sound across, and unknown knock. Investigators later treated the entry as an attempt to create a timeline for herself. It did not include an address, a name, or a plan. The event that moved the situation from vague suspicion to immediate fear occurred on Tuesday, August 30, 2022. Brianna returned to her complex after a grocery run at approximately 4:12 p.m., according to store purchase records later obtained by investigators. She entered her building through the main lobby door that required a key fob. The building used interior hallways and shared stairwells, with apartment doors opening into the corridor rather than directly outside. Brianna lived on the 3rd floor. She later told no one what she noticed during the walk from the lobby to her unit. The available record begins at her door. At 4:18 p.m., Brianna found a folded piece of paper wedged into the frame near her door. The paper was unsealed and folded twice. The message was handwritten in block letters and read as an apology and a request to speak. It was not signed. There was no phone number on it. Brianna did not take the note inside. She stood in the hallway with her grocery bag on the floor and removed her phone. At 4:19 p.m., she began recording a front-facing video. The recording captured her face, her voice, and part of the hallway behind her. In a steady but strained tone, she said she had moved to Ridgeway Heights to get away from a former boyfriend and that she believed he had found her. She stated she had discovered a note at her door and that she did not know how long it had been there. She held up the paper briefly so the writing was visible, then lowered it. She said she was afraid to enter her apartment because she did not know whether someone was nearby. She described feeling as if she was being watched. She said, "If something happens, this is why." She then turned her head toward the opposite side of the corridor, reacting to a sound. At 4:20 p.m., the door of the apartment across the hall opened. Kelvin Moore stepped out. He wore a black t-shirt and dark pants. Brianna's video recorded him entering the hallway. Moore did not run at first. He looked toward her and spoke. The audio captured him telling her to calm down and saying he wanted to talk. Brianna raised her voice and told him to stay away. She backed toward the stairwell end of the corridor while continuing to hold the phone up. The video showed her shifting from backing away to moving quickly. At 4:21 p.m., Brianna began running toward the stairwell. Moore followed. The phone video became unstable as she moved, and the recording ended abruptly after several seconds, consistent with her grip slipping or the device being dropped or stopped. Investigators later recovered the phone on the 3rd floor landing area near the stairwell door. The screen was cracked, but the file remained accessible. Residents on the 3rd floor later provided statements describing what they heard rather than what they saw. Mara Quinto, 41, an elementary school teacher, said she was inside her unit and heard a woman shout "no" multiple times, followed by a man's voice speaking in shorter phrases. She said she heard quick footsteps, then a louder impact sound that she associated with someone hitting a wall or railing. Quinto did not open her door during the incident. She said she later regretted the decision but stated she was frightened and uncertain about what was happening. A third resident, Leila Matsuura, 34, a night shift nurse, stated she was coming up the stairs and reached the second-floor landing when she heard loud voices above her. She said the voices became louder, then stopped suddenly. She continued upward and, as she approached the third floor, she heard footsteps moving away from the stairwell door and then the sound of someone running down the stairs on the other side of the building. She said she did not see the runner's face. At approximately 4:23 p.m., Brianna went over the third-floor railing near the landing. The railing was open to the central space of the stairwell and looked down to the ground-level concrete area near the building's interior entrance. Her fall ended on the ground floor. There was no evidence of additional movement after impact. A subsequent medical determination classified death as occurring at the scene. At 4:27 p.m., Hayden Lott, 37, a route driver for a beverage distributor, returned to the building after work. Lott entered through the lobby and saw Brianna on the ground near the base of the stairwell opening. He later told police he initially assumed she was injured and unconscious, then realized she was not responding. At 4:28 p.m., he called 911. The call log recorded him saying that a woman had fallen from an upper level and that she was not moving. Ridgeway Heights police officers arrived at 4:39 p.m. Paramedics arrived shortly after. Brianna was pronounced dead at 4:46 p.m. Officers identified her through her wallet and phone and notified a supervisor. Detective Marcus Leland, 44, was assigned to the case on the evening of August 30, 2022. Leland was a homicide investigator with the Ridgeway Heights Police Department and had worked violent crime cases for over a decade. He received the file shortly after Brianna Hale was pronounced dead. At the time of assignment, the working classification was a fatal fall with suspicious circumstances. There was no suspect detained, no confirmed eyewitness to the fall itself, and no immediate indication of forced entry or a weapon. Within hours, Leland requested access to the apartment complex's internal camera system. The property used a digital surveillance network covering lobby entrances, elevators, interior corridors, and external exits. At approximately 9:20 p.m., Leland began reviewing footage with a technician from the property management company. The footage from the third-floor corridor itself was limited, but cameras covering stairwell entrances and exits provided partial coverage. At 4:22 p.m. on August 30th, a camera near the ground floor stairwell recorded a man exiting the stairwell area at a rapid pace. He was a black male wearing a dark t-shirt and dark pants. He did not stop at the lobby desk or approach any unit. He exited through a side gate that led to a parking area and did not re-enter the building. The timestamp placed his departure within 1 minute of the estimated time of Brianna Hale's fall. Leland flagged the clip and began tracing the man's movements backward through the system. Earlier footage showed the same individual entering the building on multiple dates in July and August. He appeared at different times of day, often within an hour of Brianna Hale's known routines. Leland compared timestamps with key fob access records. The system logged entries by unit number and assigned badge. The man's entries matched the access code assigned to an apartment 2 doors down from Brianna's unit on the 3rd floor. The lease file for that apartment showed a short-term rental beginning July 6, 2022. The tenant name listed was Kelvin Moore. The contact email associated with the lease was not the same email Moore had used previously in employment or personal records. The payment method was a prepaid card used for the first month only. Leland confirmed the identity by pulling the ID scan attached to the lease. The scan matched Kelvin Moore, 30, formerly of Stonebridge, North Carolina. The move-in date for Moore's unit was 4 days after Brianna signed her own lease in Ridgeway Heights. Property management stated that background checks for short-term leases were limited to ID verification and payment confirmation. Leland expanded the review beyond the building. He requested footage from nearby businesses within walking distance of the complex. Over the next 12 hours, he reviewed clips from a grocery store, a gym, and a pharmacy Brianna had visited regularly. On multiple occasions, Moore appeared in the same locations within minutes of Brianna's arrival. In several clips, he did not make purchases or check in as a customer. He entered, remained briefly, and left after she did. On August 31st, Leland contacted the Stonebridge Police Department in North Carolina. He requested any prior reports involving Brianna Hale and Kelvin Moore. 2 incident reports were transmitted that afternoon. Both documented Brianna's complaints of repeated unwanted contact, unannounced visits, and late-night knocking after the breakup. Neither report included threats or physical violence, and neither resulted in charges. Leland added the reports to the case file to establish behavioral history. A forensic review of Brianna's phone was conducted later that day. Investigators recovered call logs, message threads, and a notes file documenting dates and times of suspicious activity. They also recovered an unsent front-facing video recorded at 4:19 p.m. on August 30th. In the video, Brianna described being afraid, stated she believed her former boyfriend had found her, and displayed the handwritten note left at her door. The video ended moments before Kelvin Moore appeared in the hallway. By the evening of August 31st, the narrative of an accidental fall was no longer consistent with the available evidence. Leland prepared an affidavit summarizing Moore's presence in the building, the lease under his name, the surveillance timeline, and the recovered video. A judge approved an arrest warrant for Kelvin Moore on September 1, 2022, charging him with aggravated stalking and second-degree murder pending further investigation. Moore did not return to the apartment complex after August 30th. License plate readers later showed his vehicle traveling north through Tennessee into Kentucky during the early morning hours of August 31st. On September 2, 2022, Moore was recognized by a customer at a McDonald's restaurant in eastern Kentucky. The customer contacted local police after seeing a broadcast image circulated by law enforcement. Officers arrived at the restaurant at approximately 11:40 a.m. Moore was standing at the counter waiting for an order. He did not attempt to flee. He complied with instructions and was taken into custody without resistance. He was transported to a county detention facility and later extradited to Tennessee. Kelvin Moore's first formal interrogation took place on September 3, 2022, at the Ridgeway Heights Police Department. Detective Marcus Leland conducted the interview with a second officer present as an observer. Moore, 30, appeared calm and cooperative. He did not request medical assistance or show signs of distress. After being advised of his rights, he agreed to speak. Leland allowed Moore to give his account without interruption. Moore repeated a consistent version of events. He said he traveled to Ridgeway Heights to get what he described as closure. He stated that he did not intend to frighten Brianna Hale and claimed he believed she would eventually agree to talk if he could see her in person. He denied planning the encounter and said the note left at her door was meant to apologize. According to Moore, when Brianna saw him in the hallway, she panicked and ran. He claimed he followed her only to calm her down and prevent her from hurting herself. He stated that near the stairwell, she stumbled, lost her balance, and went over the railing while he was trying to stop her. He described the fall as sudden and unintentional. He said he ran afterward because he was afraid and did not know what to do. Leland did not respond immediately. He asked Moore to repeat the timeline, focusing on movement rather than intent. Moore's second explanation followed the same structure but added small details about distance and speed. He insisted he never pushed Brianna and said he never meant for her to be harmed. After Moore finished speaking, Leland introduced the video evidence. He began with footage from the third-floor corridor and stairwell entrance, played without sound and slowed frame by frame. The sequence showed Brianna moving away quickly from Moore, increasing distance rather than closing it. It showed Moore accelerating to close that distance. At a key moment near the stairwell opening, Moore's arm extended toward Brianna. The next visible motion showed Brianna's upper body shifting sharply toward the railing. Within seconds, Moore turned away from the railing area and moved in the opposite direction, exiting the stairwell space instead of approaching the edge or calling out. Leland asked Moore to explain why he ran from the building rather than seeking help. Moore said he panicked. Leland did not argue the word. He asked Moore to explain why panic resulted in leaving the complex entirely rather than staying inside or calling emergency services. Moore did not give a direct answer and repeated that he was overwhelmed. The interview paused pending forensic confirmation. On September 4th, the medical examiner completed the autopsy. The report concluded that Brianna Hale died as a result of injuries sustained from a fall from height. The report also documented additional findings. There were fresh bruises on Brianna's right forearm consistent with a firm grip. The location, shape, and coloration of the bruises indicated they were inflicted shortly before death and were not consistent with injuries caused by the fall itself. There were no defensive wounds on her hands consistent with striking another person, but the bruising supported physical contact during the moments before the fall. Leland returned to the leasing records from the apartment complex. The file for Moore's unit showed a short-term lease signed in early July 2022. The payment for the first month was made using a prepaid debit card. The contact email address did not match any of Moore's known personal or employment emails. The employer reference listed on the application could not be verified. When contacted, property management staff acknowledged that for short-term leases, they relied primarily on identification scans and payment confirmation. No employment verification call had been made. The identification scan attached to the lease application was Moore's valid government-issued ID. Leland focused on that point. Moore had used his real name and real identification while claiming later that moving into the same complex was a coincidence. Leland compared the lease dates. Moore moved into his unit within days of Brianna signing her own lease. The odds of that alignment, combined with the prior history, were minimal. Additional footage from the parking area showed Moore sitting in his vehicle on multiple occasions before Brianna's grocery trips. In several instances, he remained parked until she left the building, then entered shortly after, returning to his unit without carrying items. These observations were documented and timestamped. They contradicted Moore's claim that his presence near Brianna was incidental. As the investigation progressed, Detective Marcus Leland focused on establishing motive. The evidence did not support a spontaneous confrontation driven by unresolved emotion. Instead, it indicated a pattern centered on control. Leland reconstructed the relationship's final months using Brianna Hale's phone records, saved message threads, and the 2 incident reports she filed with Stonebridge Police in April and May 2022. The reports did not result in charges, but they documented escalation, repeated unwanted contact, late-night appearances, and Brianna's stated fear of continued intrusion. Together, they established continuity between the behavior in North Carolina and the events in Tennessee. Leland reviewed Brianna's communications from the period immediately after the breakup. Messages showed Kelvin Moore repeatedly asking for explanations, demanding reassurance, and framing Brianna's refusal to engage as betrayal. When she stopped responding, his tone shifted. He accused her of being manipulated by others and claimed she was acting irrationally. The messages did not include explicit threats, but they demonstrated fixation and an unwillingness to accept the end of the relationship. Interviews with Brianna's co-workers added context. 2 colleagues from her data analysis team stated that in June 2022, Brianna contacted Human Resources to ask whether employee addresses were visible in internal directories. She specifically requested that her location not be shared beyond payroll processing. HR approved the request. At the time, Brianna did not give a detailed explanation, only stating that she had personal safety concerns. Leland later learned why. The most significant development came from the Digital Forensic Review. Leland issued subpoenas for account access logs tied to Brianna's personal cloud storage. During the relationship, Brianna had once shared a password with Moore, according to messages recovered from her phone. The exchange suggested it was done casually, framed as temporary assistance. After the breakup, Brianna changed several passwords but did not immediately revoke access to an older backup account she no longer used regularly. Access logs showed multiple failed login attempts to that account in April and May 2022. One successful login occurred on June 18, 2022, from an IP address associated with Kelvin Moore's apartment in Stonebridge. Investigators confirmed the IP through the service provider. The access occurred 2 days after Brianna arrived in Ridgeway Heights. Within the account, Moore accessed a small number of files. Among them was a photograph taken during Brianna's lease signing process in Tennessee. The image appeared casual and was not shared with anyone directly. In the background of the photo was a welcome packet with the name of the apartment complex clearly visible. The image did not include a unit number, but it provided enough information to identify the location. Leland concluded that this was how Moore found her. There was no evidence of private investigators, third-party assistance, or chance encounters. Moore used credentials he should not have had, accessed a private account without authorization, and extracted location information. From there, he acted deliberately. He traveled to Ridgeway Heights, located the complex, and rented an apartment within it. Leland confronted Moore with this evidence during a second interview on September 8, 2022. He presented the login records, the IP address, and the recovered photograph. Moore's demeanor changed noticeably. He stopped framing his actions in emotional terms and began questioning technical details, whether the IP address proved exclusive use, whether the login could have been automatic, whether the photo truly showed the complex name clearly enough to matter. Moore admitted accessing the account but denied understanding the implications. He claimed he did not realize the login was unauthorized and said he only wanted to know where Brianna had gone. He insisted again that he never intended to kill her, only to confront her and force a conversation. Leland responded by outlining the sequence Moore had built, the unauthorized access, the timing of the move, the short-term lease under a secondary email, the weeks of observation, the note placed at her door, the choice of an interior corridor with an open railing, and the immediate flight after the fall. The trial of Kelvin Moore began on May 6, 2023, in the Ridgeway Heights District Court. The prosecution presented the case in a strict chronological sequence. There were no narrative digressions or character arguments. The state's strategy was to establish continuity, behavior documented in North Carolina, followed by relocation, concealment, reappearance, and escalation in Tennessee. The jury was then shown the sequence from August 30, 2022. Brianna's unsent phone video was played in full. Jurors heard her explain why she believed she was being tracked and why she was afraid to enter her apartment. The video ended moments before Kelvin Moore appeared in the hallway. The prosecution did not comment during playback. The video was allowed to stand on its own. Next, the state presented the building footage. Jurors were shown the hallway timeline, followed by the stairwell entrance and exit recordings. They watched Moore move through the third-floor area, then leave the building through the side gate minutes after Brianna's fall. The footage was shown at normal speed and then slowed. The prosecutor identified timestamps and asked witnesses to confirm them. A digital forensics analyst followed. She explained the process used to examine Brianna's cloud account access logs. She testified that multiple failed login attempts occurred after the breakup and that one successful login originated from an IP address associated with Moore's Stonebridge residence. She identified the photograph accessed during that session and explained how the apartment complex name was visible in the background. She testified that this access occurred without Brianna's authorization. When the prosecution rested, the defense called Kelvin Moore to testify. Moore told the jury that he loved Brianna and that he never intended to harm her. He described the hallway encounter as an emotional misunderstanding. He repeated that she panicked, ran, and fell while he was trying to calm her. He stated that he fled because he was afraid and confused. During cross-examination, the prosecutor did not challenge Moore's statements about emotion. Instead, she asked him to explain specific actions. She asked why he rented an apartment in the same complex under a secondary email. She asked why he accessed Brianna's private account after the breakup. Moore answered that he was desperate to understand why she left. The prosecutor then asked why, if the fall was an accident, he did not call 911 or seek help. Moore did not give a direct answer. He stated only that he panicked. The prosecutor played the clip of him leaving through the side gate and asked if that was panic or a decision. Moore did not respond. Detective Marcus Leland was the final witness. His testimony summarized the investigation without commentary. He described the sequence of events from the initial fall classification to the discovery of surveillance footage, the leash records, the digital access evidence, and Moore's arrest. He explained how each piece of evidence fit together and how inconsistencies in Moore's account emerged when compared to documented actions. Leland stated that the evidence showed sustained monitoring, unlawful access, and confrontation followed by flight. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated for 2 days. On May 18, 2023, they returned guilty verdicts on second-degree murder, aggravated stalking, burglary of an occupied dwelling, and unlawful access to computer data. Kelvin Moore was sentenced to a term measured in decades, with parole eligibility restricted by statute.